Nature's Complexity in God by John William Klotz, a geneticist, and his qualifications. In considering the subject in hand, two ancient sacred affirmations at once come to mind to this writer. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. The fool hath said in his heart, there is no God. This world of ours is so complex and so intricate that it could hardly have risen by chance. It is filled with intricacies which require as the cause an intelligent being, not blind fate. Science has certainly contributed to our understanding and appreciation of these intricacies, and in that way adds to and aids our natural knowledge of God. Some of the most interesting of these intricacies are the various relationships, and he goes into great detail in regards to plants, larvae, etc., and possibly insects. Wasps, goes into wasps. Yeah. And he states, all of these instances testify to the existence of God. It is hard to believe that these could have arisen by blind chance. Their existence is due to God's directing hand and to his creative power. And we can see further evidence of this in the many instances where man, to his regret, has attempted to make changes in the balance of nature only to upset it. And he talks about early settlers in coming to Australia and so forth. And he states, a moment ago instances were mentioned testifying to the existence of God. What has been described just now is a powerful testimony to God's wisdom. The balances which he has established are delicate, and man interferes with them at the risk of doing considerable damage. Man also should be very hesitant to try to improve nature's balances. He will find that his human intelligence is no match for that of nature's God. The most vital question confronting us, by Oscar Leo Brouwer, physicist and chemist, and these are his qualifications. And he states, it is the belief of this writer that the origin of things is the most vital question confronting us. Any philosophy of life stands or falls according to its explanation of the beginning of things as we find them. So he says, let's take a look at the planet we live on, Earth. No one in his right mind would deny its existence, nor that of the rest of the immense sidereal universe. So we're dealing with an object that is unquestionably real. He goes into great detail. From whence came all this mass that we call Earth? In the case of the first answer, we are dealing with a false hypothesis. Among the fundamental properties or characteristics of things, material are those of change, growth and development. Natural science points definitely to a beginning of things. In the case of the second answer, creation, opinions all through the ages have differed widely. The theories, conceptions and beliefs concerning the creational origins of the universe can readily be grouped under 5 heads. First, there is mythology. That of course is purely the product of human imagination. Still, even mythology indicates that there is something in the human spirit that pulls man back to the aboriginal truth, that extra human, that divine power made the cosmos. Second, there is tradition. That represents stories and accounts of the events of creation that have been handed down from one generation to another. Though these accounts are badly garbled, yet they frequently contain material that reminds one strongly of the Genesis report. Third, there is philosophy. Keen thinkers among men adopt and work out hypotheses about the origin of things. If these hypotheses find response among many other thinkers, they become popular, and in halls of learning throughout the world they are accepted as the reliable results of scientific learning and investigation. Hosts of minor scholars and teachers follow. Fourth, there are the physical and biological sciences. These deal with the hard facts of man and nature as we know them. They investigate, dissect, compare, take their scalpels and high-powered lenses down into the embryonic, most rudimentary forms of material existence. They measure and calculate, and with their delicate, complicated, huge instruments, soar into vast, almost limitless heights. They study nature's history and laws and modes of operation, and in this and other ways seek to find out the factual truths about the origin of things. Fifth, there is special divine revelation. And another name for that is the Bible. Science can establish that a creative act at some time must have taken place, implying the existence of a divine intelligence and a divine power. Science can also establish that none but a divine intelligence could have been the author of the tremendous, involved and intricate system of laws in the universe. But only the Bible can identify that divine intelligence and power as the God most of us have learned to know about from early childhood. The God who has revealed himself uniquely and supremely in his Son, Jesus Christ. Returning to our discussion of the immense size of the universe and the incalculable multitude of massive stars and planets, and thinking of the multiplicity of laws that govern these stars and planets, as well as animate and inanimate creatures on Earth, does it not seem passing strange that our communist fellow men, constituting as they do a larger segment of the human race, reject the idea that there is a God? Does it not seem equally strange that a large fraction of the educated people in the non-communist world practically repudiate God by ignoring him? General recognition of God as creator and hence sovereign of the universe would mean, for one thing, an end to man's inhumanity. To man, it would mean a new spirit in man, a sensitive conscience, a purified judgment. It would mean love and righteousness. Atheism means strife and war. As a scientist, the writer will have none of it, states he'd have none of it. He considered it illogical and false as a theory. In its practical aspects, he considered it disastrous. Rank Materialism Will Not Do, by Irving William Bloch, natural scientist. And here are his qualifications. And he goes on about scientists by the look of it. Not all scientists, however, feel that science is omnipotent, that it can measure or account for everything, that it can assay truth, beauty or happiness. Science cannot explain life. Science cannot discover the purpose of life. It also can never really prove that God exists or does not exist. Science deals with the improvement of its theories. It attempts to approach reality and truth, but these, like the will of the wisp, retreat as the probing continues. Our impressions of the universe are based upon our imperfect senses and upon the tools which we have, relatively speaking, clumsily fashioned. In this connection, it is interesting to note that the famous American physician and essayist Oliver Wendell Holmes once said that as knowledge advances, science ceases to frown upon religion. Science, properly understood, is making it more and more possible to believe in a supreme being. Science has no adequate explanation for the origin of the many submicroscopic particles of matter known to exist. It cannot explain, solely upon the laws of chance, how atoms and molecules could have come together to form life. The theory which states dogmatically that all higher forms of life have evolved to their present state by chance, mutations, recombinations, polyploidy, or hybridization requires an act of faith for adherence to it, an act of unreasoned acceptance. Yes, science demands faith, faith in the senses, faith in instrumentation, faith in authority, and faith in probability, or chance. In a certain sense, it can be said that here, in faith, science and religion stand up upon common ground, although there is this difference that science can, within its own province, check its beliefs by observation and experimentation. By its continual self-criticism, it tends to eliminate the possibility of error. Religious faith is bolstered, fortified by scientific discoveries. Enough verification by science of biblical statements has occurred to renew our strength, Isaiah, and we may reasonably assume that more revelations will be substantiated. Astronomy points to a beginning in the far distant past, and physics foretells an ultimate doom. From a standpoint of modern science, it is unreasonable to assume that the universe always existed, or that always will exist. Change is one of the primary characteristics of the universe, and in this regard science and religion agree. As stated above, science can never actually prove the existence of God or explain him, yet the wonders of the universe have converted many neutral astronomers to the belief that someone unknown, and perhaps unknowable, has been responsible for the vastness and order so apparent. Chad Walsh once said, "All that can be asked of anyone, theist or atheist, is that he show the balance of probability to be on his side." That, of course, is a rather flippant way of putting it, a rather whimsical approach to the problem. Thomas Miller Forsyth had a sounding line that reached deep and far. Anything that can be known by the finite or human mind concerning the existence and nature of God must be the outcome of man's experience of God. The experience must come first. The knowledge can only be an interpretation of the experience. As for the writer himself, he does not rebel as a scientist at the laws of chance because he sees them operating at many levels in everyday lives. He does not reject materialism in toto because scientists are only successful when they attempt natural explanations of difficult phenomena. But he believes in God. He believes in him because he does not think that mere chance could account for the emergence of the first electrons or protons, or for the first atoms, or for the first amino acids, or for the first protoplasm, or for the first seed, or for the first brain. The writer believes in God, or believed in God, because to him his divine existence is the only logical explanation for things as they are. A Personal God Viewed Scientifically by John Leo Abernethy. We're actually going to go forward. We're trying to get to the last book. So we'll go back a bit. An epilogue, we think. Can you go back a bit? Okay, we'll see if this is the last book. Okay, go back here. The Absoluteness of the Certainty of God's Existence, an extended epilogue with notes by Andrew Conway, IV, PhD, MD, DSc, LLD, FASCP. So he's obviously qualified. Dr. Ivy was a scientist of worldwide renown. At this writing, he had just returned from a flying lecture tour to universities in Europe and India. He is the recipient of decorations from many American and foreign scientific institutions. From 1925 to 1946, he was head of the Department of Physiology and Pharmacology, Northwestern University Medical School, obviously in the US. From 1946 to 1953, he was Vice President of the University of Illinois, USA. Presently, or at that time, he was a distinguished professor of psychology and head of the Department of Clinical Science, University, looks like it, of Illinois College of Medicine. He's got a lot of history there. Okay, and he's saying, he's asking, is there a God? Yes. The writer says he's certain that there is a God as he is certain of anything. He is as certain that there is a God as he is as certain that there is a God as I am that I am or exist. Belief in the existence of God provides the only complete, ultimate and rational meaning to existence. Belief in God is the only ultimate reason for the absolute certainty that man is a person and something more than a parcel of matter and energy. Belief in God is the source and the ultimate basis of the most inspired conception of the human mind, namely the original natural brotherhood of man based on the fatherhood of God. Belief in God is the only ultimate and absolute source of our inalienable rights and duties, because we are truly equal only in the sight of absolute or perfect love, justice and mercy. Belief in God yields a power which guarantees that no absolute disaster can happen to the person who truly cherishes such belief. Belief in God is the only firm basis for faith in the permanency of spiritual values, because such permanency resides only in the existence of an eternal and divine personality. The existence of God can be logically demonstrated. The existence of God can be logically demonstrated by the application of the principles of thought derived from the interaction of everyday sense experience with the machinery of the mind. The formal proof was first accomplished by Thomas Aquinas. The basic principles of the proof are illustrated by factual observations which many parents have made during the process of the development of the mind of a normal child. The existence of God has been proved logically to the satisfaction of millions of profound and critical thinkers, many of whom have been the greatest contributors to science and to human welfare. Footnote and subsequent notes follow this chapter. The non-existence of God cannot be logically demonstrated. The proposition that God exists cannot be disproved. The proposition that God does not exist cannot be proved. Okay, read that again. The proposition that God exists cannot be disproved. The proposition that God does not exist cannot be proved. The existence of God may be denied, as it has been by the atheists Karl Marx and Lenin, but atheists have not supplied proof that is rational in support of their denial. One may doubt the existence of something, but even then a rational basis for the doubt should be provided. This writer has never read or heard a rational demonstration of the proposition that God does not exist, but he has read and studied a rational proof that God exists. He had also witnessed what a true belief in God, which includes Jesus Christ, does to people, and the dastardly things a denial of God and Jesus Christ does to people. The proof which atheists and many agnostics demand for the proposition that God exists is that type of proof which would make God like a human being, or make him as concrete as a statue, idol or icon. If a God with such qualities existed, a freedom of choice regarding his existence would not exist. Since freedom of making decisions obviously exists in God's plan for man, it is a part of God's plan to permit a person to decide to believe or not believe in God. Man is free, if he so decides, to delude himself with specious reasons for denying or doubting the existence of God, and to suffer the consequences. Most atheists and agnostics, and even many alleged Christians, look upon God as a personality to be bartered with or bargained with. They say in effect, I will be good if God will save my soul. I will believe in God if he will give us rain, or stop the flood, or stop my pain, or banish evil and injustice from the world. If a good God existed, I would not have a toothache. In other words, I will believe in God if he will construct or reconstruct the universe on the basis of my plan, my selfish plan, and according to my wisdom. To approach God, to think straight and consistently, people must honestly rid their minds of their selfish selves, of cynicism, of bitterness, and of those things which serve as mental blocks to clear thinking, so that they can come to believe in and love God, and thus contribute toward the amelioration of the evil and injustices they talk about and deplore. What does that amelioration mean? The riddance of it? The ending of it? In regard to the reality of God, it cannot be rationally denied that God is as real as the sustaining effects of food to those saints and sincere believers who have demonstrated by their works that they truly love God. Instead of complaining about the evil in the world, it is quite obviously a part of God's plan that we use our intellect and our freedom to make decisions to contribute toward the eradication of evil, so that thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, will become a reality. Faith, hope and love should be based on reason. This righteous belief in God, God who created everything, who exists inside and outside the universe, and who is interested in you and me, is based first on reason, then on faith, hope and love. The writer states he cannot possess faith, hope and love unless they are based in or on reason. One should never retreat from reason. One should use reason and use it accurately and aggressively. A faith which is not preceded by reason is a weak faith and is vulnerable to devastating attacks and to subversion. Religious faith not based on reason breeds bad character and bad conduct. One should not retreat from that reason and those principles of thought on which the actions and faith manifested in everyday mundane life are based, and upon which the thoughts and actions of our greatest scientists are based. Belief in God is based on the same principles of reasoning or thought on which faith in the future of material progress is founded. The same reasoning which causes you and me to believe the sun will rise tomorrow morning, or that tomorrow I shall have the necessities of life, or I shall be alive, or I shall enjoy my work. If reasoning is the basis of material progress, why should it not be used for spiritual and moral progress? Everyone should be able to state courageously the reasoning on which their religious faith is based, and to demonstrate the sincerity of their faith by good works. If you cannot prove the existence of God satisfactorily, then you have to accept God on the basis of faith, or by saying that the existence of God is self-evident, as Thomas Jefferson did when he wrote the heart of the Declaration of Independence, that all men are created equal. That should also include women. It should be that all human beings are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, or those ruled over. That is the profound statement of religious, moral, and political faith upon which the Constitution, the US Constitution, and government of the United States are based. The United States was the first secular government ever to be so based, and Thomas Jefferson and the other founders of the United States have impeccable reasons upon which to base such a faith. However, even when people say that they accept the existence of God on the basis of faith, it will be found that their faith is based on some antecedent knowledge, experience, or reasons. Some antecedent knowledge or reason is indispensable for faith in anything. To say that the existence of God is self-evident amounts to saying that I cannot scientifically or formally demonstrate the fact because of lack of formal education, or because I have never organized my reasons, or because I am not ready, or it is not appropriate to present reasons now. The writer states he has never found a person who, when urged, could not give a reason why he or she believed or should believe in God. The reason given has always been to the effect that someone had to make the world and the laws which run it, or there cannot be a machine without a maker. That is a basic truth understood by every normal child and adult.